Hello, Bible in your family, episode 133, 2 Chronicles 26 through 28, dealing with three more kings today, and one is King Uzziah. So, a couple of faithful, one unfaithful, and away we go. All right, guys, there you go. Episode 133, King Uzziah, and then we've got King Jotham, and then we've got King Ahaz. So, man, King Uzziah, tied with Isaiah. Mm-hmm. Heck of a guy.
In the year that King Uzziah died.
That's Isaiah 6, yep. Man. That is Isaiah 6, and I love that passage.
Yep.
I find there to be an interesting contrast between King Uzziah, chapter 26, and King Jotham, chapter 27. Okay? I can't remember whether we talked about this or Spency and I talked about this. I think Spency and I talked about this, but we may have talked about it. So Uzziah, this amazing king, but he sets himself up as priest, and he wasn't supposed to be. Mm-hmm. All right? So verse 19. Matter of fact, let's jump back to 16. Jump back to 16. After Uzziah became powerful, his pride led to his downfall. He was unfaithful to the Lord. Why? Because he entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. Not his job. Nope. That was the priest's job. Yep. And if you look back,
like Saul.
Well, let's go back even farther than that. Nadab and Abihu.
Oh, yeah, burned it wrong, yeah.
Why were they killed? Because they burned unauthorized fire. You want to talk about a picture of grace? Here's your picture of grace right here.
He's alive still.
Yeah, Uzziah gets to live, okay? Yeah. Azariah the priest with 80 other courageous priests of the Lord followed him in.
Men of valor. I mean, he's fighting priests.
100%. You think all of these kings killing people off, killing off priests, killing this, killing that. 80 of them rose up and said, we're going to lay down our lives for this. Because, buddy, you have now crossed a line. They confronted King Uzziah and said, it is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord. That's for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you've been unfaithful and you won't be honored by the Lord your God. Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the priests in their presence before the incense altar in the Lord's temple, leprosy broke out on his forehead. When Azariah, the chief priest, and all the other priests looked at him, they saw that he had leprosy on his forehead, so they hurried him out. Indeed, because what happens if he stays? Probably gotten worse. He would have died right then and there. Mm-hmm. He himself was eager to leave because the Lord had afflicted him. King Uzziah had leprosy until the day he died. He lived in a separate house, leprous and banned from the temple of the Lord. Jotham, his son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land.
That kind of sounds like, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's Braveheart right there.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
That's the other one, yeah. That's right.
Do I love that movie?
That's
as you well know. Then you jump down to 27. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. So Uzziah does what's right, and here comes the contrast. But unlike him, he didn't enter the temple of the Lord. That's the contrast.
Yes.
Both of them are great kings. Uzziah gets arrogant. And he tries to step into a role that was not for him to step into. Jotham, and you think about that, very humbly leads. This has got the spirit and the air of David towards Saul. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's close. No, and when I think about this, and I think about the pride, I think about Paul, that when we experience such God's blessing, like that pride is a heart. I mean, men of God talk about this all the time. Modern men, like I know it's true for anyone who operates in God's giftedness and grace. It's very hard sometimes to not think that comes from us at times. It gets mixed. It gets kind of gray. It's what Paul said. Because of these surpassing visions he had, Because of the gifts operating in him, a spirit was given him. Why? To keep him humble. And he kept saying, I need to remove it. God's like, if I remove the spirit from you, this will happen to you.
You'll turn into King Uzziah.
That's exactly right. You'll turn into blank, 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 all the guys before you. And I love that in God's grace, he allows an evil spirit to just stay in his ear and just keep on chirping at him. You know what I mean? And he's like, no, you've got to rely on me. And so, I mean, that's God's grace. Sometimes we're praying away the very thing we need. We need to keep track of that. It ain't anytime we're operating from an always, always, always. It might always be God's will. Yes, it's always God's will that we shouldn't be oppressed and blah, blah, blah. But there's sometimes we may be permitted because there's a greater will at play here. God's will needs to happen in us and through us. And sometimes because of our fallen nature, even in the process of, especially in the process of sanctification, that stuff needs to be burned out. And sometimes, as we know, the devil is God's what? Is God's hammer on the anvil. And we just need to be submissive at times. But yeah, we don't want it to last any longer than it has to, right? But anyway, that's a whole nother teaching. But yeah, that's what you got.
Well, that was the point I was making a couple episodes ago, that pain is the gateway to destiny.
Facts.
And what's Uzziah's destiny?
Yeah.
It was to be king of Judah. That was it.
That's it.
That's it. Not to be a priest.
Yep. So good.
And so swallow your pride.
Yep.
Swallow your power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, matter of fact, spit those things out.
Yeah.
Spit pride out. Spit power out.
Clothe yourself in humility.
Clothe yourself in humility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Uzziah doesn't. Jotham does.
Mm.
I want to pick up on this point that we're making. Look at verse 6 of chapter 27. Jotham grew powerful.
Mm.
Why? Because
that.
he walked steadfastly before the Lord his
Yeah.
God. I think this is one of the greatest lessons that we can learn in the faith. Jotham grew powerful because he walked steadfastly before the Lord his God. This should not be read, and I use this point all the time. This should not be read as transactional.
He has a formula, yeah. That's right.
If this, then this. That is the case. It is because he walked steadfastly before the Lord his God, Jotham grew powerful. That's 100% true. But like this morning, and we talked about this a few episodes back. This morning, when I went out for my morning walk, it was raining. The conditions were present for rain, you know?
Yep.
So rain was the result of all of the conditions being in place, okay? Jotham grew powerful because the conditions for the nature and blessing of God were in place. I was talking about this at morning prayer this morning. When you look at a healthy tree, okay, we were in Luke 6, you know, where it's talking about good trees bear good fruit.
Sure, we talked about,
It's not as though, okay, the tree did its part, so God brought fruit to the tree. No, it's the conditions of the soil. It's whether or not it gets rain.
Yes.
It's whether or not it gets sunlight. It's whether or not the trunk is kept from harm.
Yep.
It's whether or not the branches are tended
Yep.
and pruned back. You know, it's all of these things. It's protecting against disease. It's all of the conditions that make the opportunity for growth to come.
Yes.
The fruit is not the payment for pruning the branch.
No.
I prune the branch, you produce the fruit. That's not what it is. It's the ground is tended. The roots have, you know, solid nourishment.
Yeah.
The trunk is kept from harm. The branches are tended properly. And as a result of all of those things, fruit's just the natural result.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way people have to begin to see the Christian life. And as we get into the book of Job here, you know, in a few weeks, that's what Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar are saying. They're saying, you must have done bad, so your payment for bad is bad.
Yes.
And Job is like, look, man, I'm not perfect, but the reality is I have been living the conditions of a righteous life. I've been living in that thing. We talked about this a few episodes ago. Thus, this doesn't make sense to me, and it's because the entire mind shift has to change. I'm not disagreeing with how Paul wrote it, because obviously he was inspired by the Spirit of God. The wages of sin is death, okay? That's transactional, I guess. But
it's both and. So I think
I'm glad you're saying this.
It's
Go
both
ahead.
and. It's always both and. So it always will be. So, and remember, those are imperfect ways that we're trying to talk about God's perfect ways.
Yes.
Right? And so when we talk about the wages of sin is death, it's also called a ransom. It's called a payment.
Yep.
It's called an expression, an illustration of God's. I mean, it's all those things. The cross of Christ is all encompassing. It covers all of it. That's why all those things exist, right? And so, but anyway, yeah. But I love this whole, like, how many times do we see Christians get in trouble? I've gotten in trouble in the past, and will maybe in the future, obviously. I believe I've kind of come to a place where not as much, I think is a way to say it. But where I thought, man, why am I not experiencing this blessing, this prosperity, this healing, blah, blah, blah? And then that was always outcome-based and not the process.
Yeah.
Is the goal. Okay, so say prosperity visits me. Well, now what? Was that the outcome? Say healing visits me. Okay, well, now what? 9 lepers didn't come back.
Yeah.
Like, what? So what? Like, that's great. Like, but there's something deeper at play here, much deeper at play. The fruits of the Spirit are at play. We're talking about fruits, which you're talking about. What is being produced in me? If I don't experience and to see the character of Christ being birthed in me and through me, the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's why it says you can have faith that moves mountains. So what? If you have not love, you're nothing.
Yeah.
You can have, you can prophesy, but if you have not, you can speak in tongues of angels and of men, but if you have not love, you have nothing. Like if love isn't being produced in our life, and God permits those conditions. And so many times when we when you think it's transactional, well, why aren't we experiencing it? Again, remember, this is for a nation too, by the way, not just an individual. This is a nation and an individual that we go, oh my gosh. And again, watch, when he got those things, most of them went bad.
Yep.
So that isn't the goal, because when those things happen, and in fact, how many times does the Bible warn? And when you experience prosperity in the land, when you get all the milk and the honey, when you be careful, it says actually be careful. The worst things that can happen to us sometimes are the blessings of God, not the curses. A lot of times the curses will lead us to a deeper relationship with God, and the blessings will move us farther away, not because of God, nothing to do with God, because of our sinful nature.
100%.
Anyway, that's a whole
I mean,
thing.
and you're talking about that. When you say the thing about, the best thing you can do is to refuse, the immediate thought that went through my head was Naaman tried to pay Elisha off after the healing, and Elisha said, no way.
No way.
And what got Gehazi in trouble? He went to get the payment. He went to get the payment.
Think about
and
that.
And so there's a lot of times, well, you think about this. Why was Pilate shocked with Jesus? Never spoke in his own defense.
Yep.
Herod tried to get him to say anything. Never spoke in his own defense. Had the power to, didn't.
He used it, yeah.
And you think about Felix and Festus and Agrippa and Bernice.
Before
all of them said, what was this guy doing? All he had to do.
Yeah.
We would have let him go.
But he's a prisoner for the gospel.
That was it. I'm going to Rome.
Yeah.
What, to appear before Caesar?
To die.
No, but because God told me to go. See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what so many of these kings don't get. And that's another thing I was thinking while you were talking. And we always say this. We always think our episodes are going to be like 10 minutes. And they end up being like 20 and could go 40.
Sure.
But I was thinking of this. I don't want people to simply see these kings as good kings or bad kings,
they're
heroes or villains.
Yes,
they're human.
Yes,
they are human.
Yes.
And so even within watch this, even within the hero kings,
was it? Yeah.
What is that?
What does that mean?
It's not good guys and bad guys here. It's humans.
Have you not seen the list in Hebrews 11?
It's funny you mentioned that. That was part of my listening this morning.
Yeah.
When
Have
I was
you
on
not
my
seen
prayer
that
walk.
list?
Yeah. Like some of that, like Samson's on that list.
Yeah.
Jephthah's on that list.
Right.
And you think, whoa. Samson's in the roll call
Lot?
of faith?
A righteous man named by Peter. First Peter mentions what?
You mean
that
you
man
got drunk and
struggled.
slept with your daughters two times over?
It says that righteous man struggled with the world around him, with his flesh.
Gosh.
I love it because here's what makes us righteous: that we struggle against our flesh through the power of the Holy Spirit. That's righteousness, not the struggle, and that we struggle. We will struggle. We're human. But anyway, that's good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. Okay. Hey, just real quick, guys, just so you have it. Chapter 28, Ahaz, king of Judah. Look at verses 22 through 25. In his time of trouble, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus who had defeated him, for he thought, since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I'll sacrifice to them, so they'll help me. And then it just goes on down through there. Ahaz is not a good guy at all, and that's again, I'm not going back on what we just said between heroes and villains, good guys and bad guys, but there are some guys that just absolutely reject God,
Over and over,
and there are
and
other
over.
kings who are imperfectly faithful,
And trying their best.
doing their best.
Yep.
So, all right,
Truth.
there we go. Another lesson down. God bless you guys. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow. God bless.